G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I am super pumped to share with you today a few little bits from the FujiFilm Summit. It's so exciting. Go Fuji! Well, spring has sprung here in the southern hemisphere, and of course in the north it's autumn, it's fall. Welcome! How are you? I'm so excited that Fuji are up to some pretty exciting things, and we've had so many great releases today. Let's just have a bit of a chat, a bit of a dive in, a little bit of a nerd out on all of this latest cool stuff from Fuji, who just keep doing cool things.
And perhaps the coolest thing was the hint that for their 10-year anniversary, they're going to be bringing out stacked BSI sensors.
In the interests of world peace, I've got my Kanakoni hat on. I'm also shooting with my Z6 with the Sony E-mount 55mm 1.8 lens on the front. Look at that, world peace. They're working together and it's looking amazing. Next time, I may well shoot with the Sony a7R III and maybe one of my old F-mount lenses. We can do that. Okay, let's talk Fuji. Well, perhaps the biggest news from my perspective out of all of these announcements is the GFX 50s 2 Mark II. Indeed, we now have a Mark II, which is so exciting. And one of the headline features out of the Mark II is the fact that it now has in-body image stabilization. And that is giving us the capacity, the capability to turn this 50 megapixel camera into a whopping 205 megapixel potential camera with pixel shift technology. Now that is so very exciting for, say, landscape photographers. Of course, pixel shift basically means you're moving things around slightly to get that extra resolution, which means you're taking a couple of shots, which means moving things, it doesn't work so well for moving things, but that's okay because the sort of people that are getting these cameras and wanting to get 200 megapixels out of them, a lot of them are going to be people like landscape photographers.
Some of the other exciting highlight features of the GFX 50 are 6.5 stops of IBIS, the fastest AF in medium format. It's going to have the X4 processor, and of course it's going to have the 19 presets. And in this camera, there is over 100 new features versus the Mark I. It'll be available in September.
This is a really exciting camera, and I've looked longingly at the GFX line for quite a long time, both the GFX 50 as well as the GFX 100. And I don't know, I kind of sit excitedly between the two. All the resolution of the 100 megapixel version, which by the way, with a recent version 3 firmware update now shoots a mind-bending 400 megapixels using the same technology. And then the 50 megapixel version, which obviously is much closer to what I'm used to today with, say, a D850 or a Z7, 45, almost 46 megapixels. And I've often stated I don't really need or want more megapixels. But I do a lot of landscape, and with this new version of this new camera, the fact that you can either go 50 or 200 in certain circumstances, I think that's super appealing. Now, the price, well, the price is $3,999 US. That's a pretty impressive price point for what this camera brings. Another example of a camera with this same sensor or a very similar sensor, we're not sure if it's exactly the same, is the Hasselblad X1D. So I'm pumped about this camera. I think it brings a lot to the table, and of course I've talked a fair bit in the past about the fact that I think the Z mount, the Nikon Z mount, could also fit this sized sensor or something very, very close to it within. And I would absolutely love to see Nikon do that, because I am very excited about the GFX series, whether it be the 50 or the 100, but I don't really want to buy into a new camera system, a new set of lenses, especially a small medium format set, which are even more expensive. So it's difficult. I wonder if Nikon will ever do it, but for now we can absolutely celebrate that Fuji are doing really interesting stuff, and this first announcement from today, the GFX 50s Mark II, very exciting. I suppose we all know the rest of the specs, and I'm not going to do a spec read. I think it's exciting. I think it's a forward movement, and there's lots of interesting stuff in here. And we also have the announcement of the new XT30 Mark II, which is a minor upgrade. You'd basically kind of call it a firmware upgrade of the Fuji. Another piece of exciting news for GFX users is the new 35 to 70mm variable aperture zoom. Now, this is a more entry-level zoom than the current one around this same area, and I think it's great to be bringing something that's smaller and more affordable to the table. I think GFX users will rejoice with this lens for sure. And we also have the announcement of two new prime lenses, a 23mm 1.4 and a 33mm 1.4.
Also, Fuji went to great lengths to talk about their 10-year plan, and that they have lots in store also for their 10-year anniversary, which is next year, including a 55mm 1.7 medium format lens, which is a 44mm equivalent. And this lens, which is currently under development, will be very, very small. Also, for the GF series, they're going to have a 20 to 35mm lens coming soon. And to further please professional photographers, they have also announced their very first tilt shift lens for the GFX system. Also, along with a firmware upgrade coming soon, they are going to offer Black Magic RAW video capabilities. Fuji understands that video is very much a part of the future. This firmware will be available in October. Also, Fuji shared a development announcement for the X-mount 18 to 120mm, along with a 150 to 600mm super telephoto zoom for planned release next year.
So let's talk about, just for a little bit, the amazing advantages of the Fuji platform. Now, I've been someone who, back in the film days, yes, some of us did use film, we're that old, and some of my absolute favourite films were from Fuji. Provia, Sensia, Velvia. These were all magnificent products to shoot with. And what I love about the Fuji system, but I've never had a chance to experiment with it, which is why I'm contemplating an XT3 or an XT4 or a Fuji GFX. Oh, geez, no, maybe not. Anyway, why I'm contemplating these is because of these film simulations. Now, of course, this can be done in post, but I've always been a photographer who really likes to do as much as I can in camera and then just move on, because what I find is ultimately post becomes like being a kid in a candy store, and then sometimes you can just get a little bit lost and not really ultimately being able to decide what you want to do. So do it in camera and then you can move on. Do it in post and you've got not infinite, but probably millions of combinations of things you can do if you play with every slider or use presets and then play with those presets. It just it does my mind in. So I love the idea that they're built into the Fujis. I think that's great. I think that's a great advantage. And what Fuji are doing, they're choosing to excel in APS-C and they're choosing to excel in small medium format. And I would say in both of those categories, they're probably leading, especially leading from a market share perspective and probably from an ergonomics perspective, although I do love the small medium format Hasselblad. But they sit in a different place, and I think the GFX series is probably ultimately a more well-rounded tool that offers more features and definitely more bang for buck. So I'm super excited to see Fuji today doing all of these new things, new cameras, new lenses. This is an absolutely great step forward for them, for their brand, and showing us that they're here and they're here into the future. Now, obviously, FujiFilm is a massive company, so there's absolutely nothing to worry about on that front. All right, well, I look forward to talking more about Fuji in the future. I'd love to hear your Fuji stories, and are you interested perhaps in this new GFX 51 megapixel glorious beast that would absolutely create the most stunning images? I believe Thomas Heaton is now very excited about his GFX 50. I wonder what he's thinking about this new version. And of course, these lovely lenses. It's really interesting to watch the blurring of the lines between the small medium format and the higher end 35mm. And what is this going to mean? As the prices just basically almost cross over, I think it's a really interesting time that we have ahead, and I really do look forward to talking about this more. Please let me know in the comments below your thoughts. I'd love to talk about this a whole lot more. I think it's super interesting stuff. It's so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, and please like. You can get into the world piece as well with your Canacone or your Panacone X, which includes Fuji. Hats, t-shirts, apparel, and so on. All right, I'll see you on the roundabout. Take it easy. Be there or be square. Bye.